All right, so here's the setting. Our daughter, who was in high school, had come to us. She's decided she needs a dog. She's so persuasive, we give in. And then we remember we're not dog people. And what ensues is chaos and a lot of heart and us wondering, what have we done? But as it turns out in God's plan and what can turn out to be miracles, that dog, her name was Lady, she was the dog that saved us. This is that story. And this is the David Magee Show. I'm David Magee. I'm so glad you joined us. With me is a person who's had incredible patience because she's been with me for 37 years, my wife, Kent Magee. Do you remember that day our daughter, Mary Hallie, comes to us? Look, I mean, half of America, I think stats show 45% of Americans today have a dog. When we were children, it was about 37% of households. So now it's almost 1 in 2. But we were not dog people. We just couldn't do it. We had 3 children. We were trying to manage that. And then here she comes begging and pleading.
Right. We were kind of in that chaotic period of having 3 teenagers in the home. And, you know, just that can be a wonderful, but it can be a, pretty stressful at times season. And, looking back on it now, which is kind of what we now get to do, is look back on that season. There were even more underlying problems that were starting to, develop in our home. And like our marriage, we were having, tension for sure, some cracks starting to develop. We're about to send our oldest son off to college. And then our youngest, Mary Hallie, was, I think, about to start 9th grade. And she just decided, she said, we have never had a pet. And, our children were born really close in succession. And so we were usually from birth up until this point, our hands were full, our plates were full. And we probably wisely had never taken on pet ownership before then. But, when she was so persistent, all of her friends had dogs. And we were like, it's almost un-American not to allow, your children to have a pet when they are making this case and begging for it. So, we gave in and said, sure, how hard can this be? We'll do it.
Yeah, how hard can it be? We didn't, even though when we were children, I won't date us, but let's just say 50 years ago, yes, a lot of American households had dogs then, but it was different. I mean, my parents got a dog for just a little while. And let me tell you, our house was plenty dysfunctional, but they decided, and I think my adopted sister had talked my parents into getting a dog. And almost so ironically, they get a dachshund. They named it Happy. Our household was dark. I guess they're trying the same thing. They're trying to lighten it up. They get this dachshund. Its tail never stops wagging. They name it Happy. Here's the problem. Our household wasn't. Nobody knew what to do with the dog. In those days, yeah, maybe 37% of American households had a dog 50 years ago, but often it was a yard dog. So they get this dachshund. They didn't want it in the house. But it wasn't a lab. I mean, it was a dachshund, but they decided they don't want it in the house. So my father makes this place for it where it's about a 5 square feet a yard where it has to live down in the basement. And it was covered in fleas and it was so sad. I thought, I don't want a dog. And you would share stories of growing up where they were similar, as in you lived on a farm and the dogs went outside. So we
nobody had fences.
That
was not a thing. So
yeah, I mean they weren't even safe and they weren't. And so we were so busy for some years changing diapers with 3 children and trying to manage ourselves. We married his children. We're trying to manage ourselves. The idea of something, but we finally give in. And you were the key to that. Like a lot of children, I mean, Mary Hallie is our 3rd. And listen, she could put those hazel eyes on her daddy and get persuasive. And she put them on me, and she made this case when to me off to the side first. And she had gone online and she'd done all this research, in one of those dog predictors about what kind of dog would be right for your family. And she's like, Dad, I think it's a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. She makes the case, and I'm like, listen, I don't really have this full say. You got to talk to your mother. So she brings you this case. And like you said, I guess she finally breaks you down and you give in.
Right. Well, it's just looking back on it now, and we are able to, look back on that was the beginning of a season that was going to be incredibly hard for our whole family, for our marriage, for all three of our kids. And, it's just we can look back now with grace and see how the Lord does go before us. And even something as small as a dog, bringing in a family pet, I feel like he was putting pieces in place that were going to serve us and support us and heal us, like on earth, for the next, I guess, like 5-8 years at that, or 10 years at that point, which we had no idea of. But we're very grateful for that now. But, that was the beginning. And so we then started to look around for, I think the survey said we would be a perfect match for a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, which I didn't even know what was. And so we had to find, she showed me the pictures. We then still, there was the want ads in the newspaper that was tossed in the yard still. So that's, of course.
Truly, there was barely an internet.
Right. So miraculously, there was a litter of Cavalier King Charles Spaniels for sale in Chattanooga, where we were living. And we said, well, let's just go over and look at them and check it out and see what, just see what
the odds of us coming home without a dog are like zero.
Always you're coming home with a dog. So we went, and it was this local police officer. He had 2 pet Cavaliers in his home, and he said that he would let them, have 1 litter a year, and he would sell them to supplement his police officer salary. But, he had no paperwork on them. It's just, you get nothing that you would get, say, with a certified breeder.
That's
which
right.
was fine. We didn't care about that anyway. And so we went, and they were cute as could be, as far as, we could tell. So of course we came home with, the little girl puppy, who was the biggest one in the litter.
Twice as big, almost 3 times as big as all of the other puppies. Like, it almost wasn't right. She was such a big, burly girl. But we just thought, well, here's this big girl. Let's bring her home. She maybe is the healthiest, sturdiest one.
Right. Mary Hallie at first wanted the runt.
She wanted the runt. I pointed to the big, sturdy one. Yeah.
And then I was like, I think maybe you should get the bigger, solid one. She'll be healthy or whatever. And they were all adorable. So we, of course, brought one home, and we were off to learning kind of trial by fire, trial and error, how to be dog owners, which was very much a new experience for us. We even had one neighbor that said, who was a dog owner herself, said, how are y'all going to have a dog? And
we're so naive.
We're like, well,
that we didn't even understand both the barb she was throwing us and how she was reflecting what she saw of our lives at the time. You were running a business. I'm in a past the beginning stage of a midlife meltdown. I'm gone literally and metaphorically. You're trying to run a business, as going to yoga. But Mary Hallie made this case, right? We had 3 children. Our family was changing, and she had 2 core arguments to her case, of course. One, William is going to college, Mom and Dad. William is going to college. We need something. And that spoke to us because, honestly, I tell my friends, our friends that are younger than us, or their children or their families about to change dynamics, this is more real you need to be prepared for this, because you get such in the drill of there's a soccer game, there's a track meet, there's this, and oh, it's the prom, and everything is revolving around them, and your life becomes them, and even the dinner table. And then there's the oldest, the one who was the funny one, the one who was, and he's leaving, and that piece is removed. And then the family, you start looking around going, uh-oh, are we going to be okay? So Mary Hallie makes this case. William's going to college, we'll get the dog.
Right.
And then, which spoke to you, as I recall. But then the other thing she says is, and okay, she was a teenager, but she makes this full compelling case. And I think she even made it on paper of how she will take care of the dog. I will feed him. I will pay for him, which she did. She had savings, she had money. I will feed it. I will walk it. I will take care of this dog. Hello. Right. Every parent's heard that story before. The question, though, or the problem became we were struggling to take care of ourselves. And so here's what happened. We bring in this adorable dog, as you say, this Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. We didn't even know at the time, we learned later, these dogs were bred to be lap dogs for royalty. To say that they're precious is a ridiculous understatement.
Well, they definitely love human touch.
Yes.
And that's one of the endearing things about those kind of dogs. But, it's just, this proved to be the first point that our dog, Lady, we named her Lady, came to serve for us. I was unprepared of what a life-changing thing it is when we had been the Magee party of 5 for a long period of time. And all of a sudden, when one member of your family just pulls out and is gone off to college, and it changes just the dynamics of your home. It creates a void, a
big void
that you have to adjust to. And, it did. And William would laugh and say, I left and y'all replaced me with the dog, and y'all didn't miss a beat, And I really, at the time, was not thinking I'm replacing him with the dog, but in a little bit of a way, a void came, and then we filled that void, and, she filled it up. And, so life just continued so we kept moving forward. Things then started to get a little increasingly harder.
And then we still then have this dog, which we did not know how to manage.
No, we didn't.
And she, dogs are so forgiving. If Lady was a person, and, this is leading up to, as I said in the beginning, this is a story of the dog that saved us. And she saved us. And we'll get to that. But if Lady was a person, Kent, she would have run away from home. We just didn't know. So we didn't crate train her, and we'd leave for the day. And
we tried to crate train for about 2 days. I think.
Right.
Everybody said, she needs a crate. You put her in it at night, and then she'll sleep, and then y'all can sleep. Well, we did it the first night. She cried all night.
Yeah.
We did it the second night. She cried all night. And about the third night, you were already in bed. I was getting ready for bed, came in, and a little dog pops his head out from under the sheets. And I was like, oh my gosh, you've got her in our bed? And you were like, well, she cries in the crate. Well, I think she wants to sleep with us. And at that point, I was exhausted, and we both just went to sleep. And there she was, and didn't whimper. She was happy as a clam the rest of the night. And then from then on, she slept.
She started running the house.
Either on our pillows or just draped across our bodies.
Right.
And kind of just alternating.
Literally, sometimes I would look over there, and big burly lady, and anybody that knows about Cavaliers, she was oversized. People would look at her and go, oh my, she's a big Cavalier. I mean, she was in 30s pounds. I mean, she was a big girl. She was a plus size. She was a tricolor, black, white, with a little tan on her mouth, and just a beautiful dog, but a plus size, big girl. And sometimes I'd look over there, and she'd be sleeping across your face, but we'd leave her at home, and we didn't even know. And, she would roam in the yard and had an electric fence. And for this lap dog, somebody was coming from a line that was bred for royalty. She'd be out playing in the mud in a rainstorm and then come in our house, and she was more like a mud spaniel than climbing on the furniture, chewing a hole in every shoe you had. We didn't understand. We didn't know she needed to walk. We just didn't understand. She destroyed, Hudson would bring a girlfriend home. The lady would destroy their shoes, their whatever they had there. And we just thought like this was the nightmare situation. What have we done? And everybody's been through life. I mean, I'm sure people listening are there now where you think, you kind of impulsively, I'm going to go get a new job. I mean, I've done it. I've had lots of impulses that I've regretted, believe me. But sometimes these things that you get yourself into that seemed right. I mean, we had a good argument for this. Mary Hallie made a good case. Our family was changing. The universe was telling us we need a dog. We did it, but it was hard. And as the tension and frustration and even anger, for good reason, developed within our family, our children began to struggle. I was struggling. Our marriage is struggling. Therefore, then our dog is struggling. And we would often think, what have we done?
Right. And so she filled such a void first when William went away to school, gave us something to focus on. But then, like we said, things were getting hard. And eventually, as you know, you and I split up and you left our home. And it was a very hard season for me, for all of us. But, so I felt very alone.
And I'm so sorry. Once again, by the way, I can never say it enough, but I'd need to interrupt you and say that, but continue.
Well, we have done a lot of work
Sure.
and resolved there.
Well, I can always say I'm sorry. I'm
right.
sorry never gets old.
Okay, you can continue to say that. Yeah, but then, when I would come home after a full day of work and, pretty quickly be headed to bed, having this little dog sitting there waiting for me. And the moment I got in the bed would just like come and just lay across my chest. It was such a comfort when at times, we had kind of taken turn. I'd push her to your
Shove her
side, then
away.
you push her back to my side, then I'd push her back. I wasn't even aware then that we, were creating this story that it was going to be just me for a while alone. And there she was. And it was largely, hugely comforting to me.
She's got a warm heartbeat. She's not judgmental. She's there consistently.
And she still needed me.
And she still needed you.
And I needed her. And it was kind of the beginning of this real bond that I had that before she had just been the little,
in the way.
Yeah. We were still such new dog people that we would laugh and go, it's so odd that we have this little animal that just like runs around in our house now and lives here.
And didn't run off even though we couldn't properly care for her. But there was a period to where, okay, to be fair, you weren't like Imelda Marcos. You owned a women's boutique. So to be fair, you had a lot of clothes, but that's not your normal thing when you don't own one. Like now, you don't buy a lot of clothes. But you owned a women's boutique, so you had a lot of clothes. There was a period where I'm telling you, lady probably went through $10,000 worth of shoes and clothes.
I don't know. I would maybe guess it's not that.
I don't know, but you'd come in there with this pair of shoes, and it was
right.
and it'd be like, she destroyed another one, and I'd think like, oh.
Well, she definitely destroyed some furniture, chewed legs of furniture and corners of cabinets, and how dogs, they can just whatever's in their path.
When they're anxious, when they're, if they're not getting the attention they need.
Right.
But so what happens is you start to bond with her, and our family is coming back together. And then, we're seeing her as a part of the family, and William got to meet her, and we would laugh like, this is our new child. He would say that replaced me. But then we began to go through some even unspeakable tragedy that what we'd faced before was only the tip of the iceberg. And multiple things happen, but the biggest one that is certainly well known is our son William dies at a young age, in his early 20s, of an accidental drug overdose. And our daughter Mary Hallie, our son Hudson, you, me, we're back together. We're trying to make it work, and we're coming back together. And a couple of things happen. Number one, even day one, we're all sitting together, and you're just in that immediate grief. And here's Lady. And it's almost like our big burly Cavalier can sense something is changing. You know, dogs have that sense. And she's really hovering extra close, and she's in everybody's lap, and everybody's taking turns petting her. And it's a point of conversation for us with our family. And immediately Lady takes a deeper role. It is a life preserver. I feel like, and I remember in that time we'd had to sell our house because as you go through hard times like that, we'd had financial trouble, and we're living in this small condo. And look, we were just thankful to have that condo. And there's this, but essentially if you view that condo like we're out in the middle of this ocean and we're in this just horrible storm here of this tragedy, here's Lady, this life preserver, and we're all kind of keeping hands on her. And we're all she's this common keeping us afloat. And the first morning after, I think I'd mentioned on the last episode, I'm wanting to stay in the bed. You come and kick the bed. Get up, get up. Lady needs to go out. Lady needs to go out. And we'd lived in Chattanooga by the walking bridge that it's well known if you visit or live in that community. And you pull me out of bed, leash up Lady, sun's barely coming up, and you Lady leads us on this walk. It's a half mile down the walking bridge to the other side, to the north shore of Chattanooga, and a half mile back. In that first morning, you pull us out and you go on that walk. And I'm guessing you're thinking at the moment, the dog needs to go out. But I guess you're thinking we just have to keep moving. We can't just sit here and drown in this.
Right. Well, to me, when I look back on that season, and I think that how the Lord does go before us in ways that we have no idea how this is going to work to our benefit, the most hugely healing and gift to me was the fact that we sold our home that we had raised our kids in, had moved into a condo downtown downtown Chattanooga, which is on the Tennessee River, runs through town. There was, condos right, and there was an old railroad bridge that had been converted to a walking bridge. So we walked out of our place right onto where the foot of that bridge. And on the fourth floor, no right. Yard, and we have this dog, which we thought, well, we can do that. And we simplified, we got rid of so much, 2 large trucks to Salvation Army. I cleared out of our house, and it was a very wonderful time. We'd put our marriage back together, family coming back together, moved there. And the only kind of hitch is, now our dog, we have to take her out. She has to walk. She has no yard. So, we were diligent about that. But fortunately, this beautiful, stunning place to walk our dog across the bridge and back, and the river passing under the bridge, mountains on either side. And it turned out to be Lady led me through my grief in a way that was so huge I can't even describe. I mean, it was like the biggest God-given gift to me. I wouldn't have been able to do it. And
I don't know if you could have.
I mean, it wouldn't have happened like that. So as you said, William, we were back together there. 2 months into being there, we found the call that William had passed away. And so, I mean, our family is just in shambles and shattered, and our hearts are broken. And don't know how we're going to go on with life as we knew it, which we didn't go on with life as we knew it. But all I knew was the next morning I had to get up, and I'm an early riser anyway. I had to, the moment my feet hit the ground, there was a little dog sitting there that had been inside
A big little
these
dog.
four, walls since for the last 8 or 10 hours and needed to get out. So I would leash her up, walk across that bridge, and then walk back, which took about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, all the way across to the other side and back. And as I was there, usually my timing was the sun would start to rise over the mountains as I was headed back in. The water was passing under the bridge, and sometimes I'd pause, and I would usually put earphones in and put some kind of spiritual music, like maybe just soft praise music, something that just was spiritual. I almost felt like it was a walking prayer in a way. And every day I did it as the sun came up. Usually I did one more walk as the sun was setting before we kind of turned in for the night. But every time I walked across that bridge, tears would pour down my face.
You're walking over the flowing river, and I would make that. I ended up having to take a job in a nearby city, so I was not there for every day. So let's say in a year, you, except for being out of town a couple of weekends, I mean, you did 355 of these every day for a year, mostly. And, I probably did, 60 of them. But every time I would be with you, tears would be flowing. So you're walking over this flowing river, and you're crying a river every single day.
Right.
You're crying over and back and just purging, and
I realized, rain, snow, 100-degree summer weather, it really didn't matter. I got a big parka coat with a fur hood and a good raincoat and an umbrella, and regardless, boots, we would
I know.
off.
I remember one day, because I'm a weather person. One day, I remember calling you from Birmingham, and you guys had gotten a snow, and we hadn't. It was a very large, unusually large snowstorm for Chattanooga, and it was 5.5 inches, and you'd taken Lady in it, and you were saying, "Oh yeah, she trudged across." And Lady, you had anybody that, first of all, Cavaliers are terrible leash walkers. And sure, they're trainable, but not that trainable. And as we pointed out, we weren't dog people. So our dogs, she didn't have manner. There was no, this was not a well-trained. She was just trained to get up in our lap and love. There was no, so when you would walk, she was a hard, big, strong girl in the lead, pulling on a leash, chasing a pigeon, but she forced your action. And I recall you walking in a 5.5 snowstorm, and then that summer there was a record heat wave, and it was 100 degrees. And I think I wrote a line in Dear William about our memoir, about our story, about some of those early mornings when I was with you, and you made me get out of the bed. You made me get out of the bed. I wanted to stay in it. And I got up, and I shed tears as we held onto the leash and followed Lady across that bridge and back. And I'll never forget one of those first times leaving in the dark. And you've got the moonlight out, and it was a clear night, and the moon was glistening off the river flowing beneath us, the Tennessee River. By the time we're almost back, this sun has peaked just over the mountain, and you just see, and I wrote in the Dear William memoir, I remember just being so overwhelmed, because I remember William being a little toddler and playing peekaboo, and his peeking out his face, can you see me now? And just giving me a little peek of his face and giggling and smiling. And, I remember that sun peeking its face that way as we got to the end of that walk, and you realize, man, do I feel so much grief, but I'm also hopeful. I'm also hopeful, a childlike hopefulness of it will be okay, and reclaiming some of that in that childlike face I would see of the son emerging. And,
I would just feel his presence so much.
Yeah.
It just kind of evolved, and I would feel his presence and would speak to him. I felt like he was just right there in the clouds, and just, and then I started to realize that I didn't even think about at first crying, but just as I would take off and just look up at the sky and go, how am I going to get through another day? How are we going to do this without you? And I would just feel his presence, almost see him, and then tears would pour. I mean, and at times, I had to just almost stop and bend over and ugly cried. It just came up and out, and this river was flowing underneath, and nobody else is. I mean, one or two stray people at that hour. Usually, it's almost like you had the place to yourself. So it was just it was like a walking meditation and prayer time, and tears would just flow, and then it almost became like I craved getting up and getting out there, and heaving out some more tears. And then coming back, and then taking a couple of deep breaths, making a pot of coffee, and then going and starting my day. And I felt like I could get through my day then because I had done it. And then if, for whatever reason, which there were not many, I would just be craving, I need to do that. And I thought, well, maybe a month or two, or how many. I mean, we were into moving into the second year, and still I would go and just, it was like a trigger, and all these tears would flow. But, it saved me.
It saved us
because it moved me through grief, and it's so easy to get stuck in grief. And
we know people, I have such empathy. Look, I have plenty of things I battle getting stuck in my life, but I have friends that come to us and, say, look, I had profound loss, and I'll be honest, I'm 5 to 10 years past it. Somebody will say, I can't get out of it. And I often say, gosh, you need a good dog and a long walk. And it's hard for, we didn't want to sit here and just get into so many anecdotes and overstate how much we struggled as a dog owner early on in Lady's days, but we struggled, and it was frustrating. And I see that happen with college students all the time. We live in a college community, and by the time, they're about a junior, the in vogue thing, and they move to the apartment, especially if they got a boyfriend or something, they're kind of got some nesting instinct. They all start thinking they want a dog. And the horror stories that we see, and it's not just one. Your child in college says they want a dog. Maybe they should wait a minute, right? But we see this play out all the time, and they get a dog, and it's more than they can manage. They're not there. They're gone. They're not prepared for this. Well, that was kind of us. Lady was seemingly arriving at the wrong time. And look, you can say what you want about us or think what I understand. If you'd asked me, would I ever have hosted a podcast episode on the David Magee Show and talked about a dog, I might have been embarrassed. But it's important because the dog represents so many things in life that we can't understand at the moment when we're kind of in the struggle with it. How maybe in the longer run, it is an angel sent to us. And Lady literally pulled you and pulled us across that bridge and back every single day as the tears of grief flowed and gave us the hope that we could you could survive, then we could survive. And look, it's all a domino effect. If you don't come through that so well, we don't. If you don't, our family doesn't. And every family member plays an important piece in that. What was so beautiful about it, and particularly with our big girl Lady, we knew at the time when we first got her what a struggle it was, but I remember in the midst of that walk, sometimes when you're in the midst of something like that, you don't recognize the impact it had on your life until you can look back years later. I knew watching it, and I would go to, say, my job and work for 4 days, and I would come back for the weekend. I remember us talking about it. I remember recognizing there's something happening here. And I remember noting, and I remember telling you, you and Lady have developed. I thought you'd kind of developed a survivor thing with her before, but you and Lady had developed, your relationship with your dog had gone to a different place. We were no longer those children of the 70s who grew up with the dog in the basement the parents called Happy, but frankly were trying to ignore. We had become the contemporary family of 21st century America that believed our dog was a part of our family. Mm-hmm. And you had bonded with her, and she bonded, and it played a role across our whole family. So then soon Hudson, our son, who struggled with addiction like William, and but had found recovery, soon he gets a dog, and the dog is playing a role in his life. And we're talking about dogs at the dinner table constantly, and Lady is kind of this ongoing story within our family, and her presence and her role elevates. And William is gone, and here's Lady, and she's just a dog. And we didn't misunderstand that then, and we don't misunderstand that now. But there was something so divine and human connecting for us about how we did it. And then, the thing about Cavaliers is I would always try to prepare myself. Because I'm just that kind of person. I need to know. I'm always looking up information. I'm a journalist by trade, right? And so you would get mad at me because I would frequently remind everybody, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels have short lifespans. They don't have a very long lifespan. And I remember you getting frustrated, and Mary Hallie would get frustrated sometime when I would say that everybody's visiting. Okay, well, can we just enjoy our dog for the moment? But her years were ticking by, and our family was rebuilding. Our family, we were remarried. We were celebrating one another. We were celebrating dogs. We were celebrating faith and new life, and we were celebrating William. We were learning how to celebrate our lost son. But Lady's usefulness, she came to us for a reason, and she served us, but her time was ticking down. And so we'd gotten her in 2008 when William had gone to college, and a decade later her heart was giving out. And we watched that, and you cared for her so much. And I remember watching you pick her up and carry her when she could barely walk. And I said before you were ready, maybe it's time to put her down. You weren't ready to let go.
Well, she was born with a heart murmur, and we knew that from the first
typical
vet
for
visit.
that breed, yeah.
And that breed tends to have heart issues, and so then we started medication for her that was supposed to help with the heart issues, and it was essentially heart failure. And then she would become really swollen and even would collapse at times if she overexerted and went up some steps. And so we were seeing she was being treated by a vet for this, and then going back, our vet just said at this stage, she's not going to improve. You're just kind of buying her time each time you come in. And literally they were like draining some fluid off of her heart. And we knew that she was having a hard time, and we didn't want to see her that way. And but how do you then actually take the steps? Okay, let's pick her up and take her to the vet so they can put her down. You're just like, well, let's,
because we pet owners are so selfish.
Just keep. It's just hard to
She'd been such a part of our life. What's the day? That? Yeah.
And
by then we had another dog. We found we liked the Cavaliers, and we had gotten a Blenheim Cavalier named B. So we had two, and Lady and B made a great pair. And so, the dog you almost felt sorry for that was adopted into the family that couldn't care for her, she was this resilient soul, as dogs are, and she stayed with us, and then she served us the way, so many people listening, I know I mean, I've had friends with hunting dogs. I've had friends with lap dogs. Our story's not alone. Our story is our story, and your story is yours. For us, she played a role and filled in our family, but really pulled us through grief. Literally unanswered prayer. She was put into our lives to help us deal with the most difficult thing that we could have broken from. And instead, she pulled us into the light. But the day comes where, it's time. And she can barely move, and you finally say, it's time. We take her to the vet, and just like people, people need a lot of times, say, a parent, and they're in a critical situation. The saying is, they'll fight and hold on for us. But when we're able to let them go, often, once they're freed in their late stage of sickness, very often they will just let go. And we'd been holding on, not ready to let go. And you finally got there for Lady's sake. And we go to the vet, and you said, well, and the vet who we knew said, well, I'll go get the shot if y'all want to say goodbye. And
so we're sitting on the floor because she's lying on the floor, the lady, the dog. And so I'm just sitting there kind of, holding her head, and, she's looking around and like, where are we, and the vet tech goes back to get a syringe to come in and just, so they're like, if y'all want to, we'll give you a moment to tell her goodbye. And so, of course, when you lose a pet too, after losing something like even larger, like a family member, like a child, of course, like the loss of the pet just kind of digs up all the memories of William with Lady, and we got Lady when William left, and just again, just like a loss. And so of course we're grieving William again more than probably even the normal
for sure.
Normal people would, So, I said goodbye to her and kind of rinsed, rubbed her head and gave her a kiss, and then David did. And she kind of laid her head back down on the floor, and then the vet came back in and with the syringe and went down and kind of rubbed her and she said, I think she's gone.
Yeah.
And we were like surprised and we were surprised, and she lifted her up and said, she's passed. And so they just, put the syringe away, and
she
again,
just waited
like
for
God's
us to say
perfect
goodbye.
Timing. It was not us deciding when the end. It was the end of her life, and we got to be right there with her. And of course we boohooed, and we're just thankful for her and all the memories, and still to this day look back, and I'm just so thankful how, like I said, just things come into your life for reasons, the purposes they're going to serve.
You don't even know why.
Ever,
why you've done what you've done, or it's uncomfortable and it's awkward and you want out of it. I remember thinking right after we got Lady, okay, well, could we get out of this? And this poor dog needs to be sent somewhere to a family. But now, of course, we are dog people, and we have two. And the dogs live a ridiculously good life, and that's over. And I will say that as we wrap this up, I used to. So we're recording this right before National Dog Day, and its episode will air right after National Dog Day. You can't hit it right on the. I used to think that was the corniest, silly thing. All these National Dog Days, they just come up with to sell things. But you know what? I think everybody that has a dog, and that's about 1 out of every 2 household, probably it's a good time to go hug your dog and say thank you, and because they play such an important role in our lives. And Lady, that big, oversized, plus-size girl, Cavalier, truly was the dog that saved us. This is the David Magee Show. Come back and listen to us again. We're back. We're here every Tuesday. A new episode releases. You can follow us on social media. You can find my newsletter, David Magee, at Substack, and sign up for that. And tell your friends about it. This is where we talk about the messiness of life and family in general, but all the beauty that comes out of it, even down to a dog named Lady. We'll see you next time.